Now I've got to ask you, Keir Starmer yesterday changed the conversation. Everyone was talking about Angela Rayner's shock resignation, and he perhaps some were less shocked than others. But the Prime Minister, some might argue, acted decisively, changed the narrative, turned it into a story about a reshuffle that perhaps was not so long planned, but perhaps some in Number 10 pretended it was long planned. That really changed the media narrative. Are you worried that Number 10 is learning now? That there are actually some competent people there in Number 10, and that they've been able to sort of change the narrative from a negative story for them fairly quickly?
No, I don't think there's any common sense in there at all, Tom. I mean, it's only last Wednesday at PMQs that Sir Keir Starmer was praising her and proud to be sat beside her in the Commons. 3 days later, she's gone. She's slung her up.
Final question. Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary. People in the Labour Party say she's very competent. What do you make of her? What do you reckon?
I don't really know her, to be honest, but I know in the past she's been out on these demonstrations, hasn't she, with the waving the old Free Palestine flag. She's one of these cabinet ministers that signed the about, I think it was 2 or 3 years back, we had a deportation flight to Jamaica. She was one of the Labour MPs that signed the letter to stop rapists and murderers being deported to the homeland, and this is a woman now who's in charge of the nation's security. It's an absolute joke, and the people out there aren't buying it.
When your Deputy Prime Minister walks out the door, you've got two choices: panic or pivot. Keir Starmer chose to pivot, but was it leadership or damage control dressed up as strategy? Angela Rayner's shock resignation sent Westminster into meltdown. The woman once described as Labour's most powerful voice outside Downing Street was gone, and the questions came flooding in. What happened? Why now? And crucially, who knew? Here's what makes this politically explosive. Just days before her departure, Starmer was standing beside Rayner at PMQs, publicly praising her, projecting unity. Within 72 hours, she was out. That's not a planned reshuffle, that's a crisis with a fresh coat of paint. Number 10 moved quickly to reframe the story. Suddenly, this wasn't about a fractured relationship at the top of government, it was a bold restructuring of the cabinet, a show of decisive leadership. The media largely played along, which tells you something about how effectively Downing Street managed the optics. But managing the narrative and actually governing competently are two very different things. Now the spotlight falls on Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary. Her appointment is already generating serious scrutiny. Critics are pointing to her previous support for protests and, perhaps more damaging, a letter she signed opposing the deportation of convicted criminals to Jamaica. For the politician now responsible for national security and border control, that history will follow her into every press conference, every parliamentary debate, every policy announcement. For ordinary British people, this isn't just Westminster drama. Who controls our borders matters. Who sets the tone on crime and security matters. And when a government reshuffles not from strength but from survival instinct, voters notice. The real question isn't whether Starmer handled this smoothly, it's whether this government actually knows where it's heading or whether it's simply reacting one crisis at a time.